On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks are heading into the NBA playoffs. Not sure what seed, not sure what opponent, but we've got some big burning questions for the Dallas Mavericks, for their opponents, for the coaches, for the front office, all kinds of things we have to know by the end of the playoff run. We'll talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where we hit 12,000 subs. Thank you. Thank you to everyone for helping.
You didn't tell me? We hit 12,000.
Hit 12,000 subs.
We hit 12,000. You didn't text me. You didn't tell me. We just talked for like 2 hours before we hit on this recording this freaking podcast, and you didn't tell me any of it. We hit 12K.
I was sitting on that one. We literally did talk for like an hour before this, and yeah, I did not tell you, but we hit 12,000 subs.
Going for 13 before the playoffs.
Going for 13 at the end of the playoffs. Let's do it. 13,000. We did the first one. We did 1,000 in a month, so we can do another 1,000.
But seriously though, shout out to everybody who has listened, who has jumped on board. We do this every now and then. That we started doing this pod. You know, we're in our sixth
May
year.
2017 was our first episode. Took over for Mike the Machine and for Jake Kemp. Good guys.
It's insane, just like how much you guys have stayed with us. How many of you guys have jumped on, not just from the beginning, but when they got Luka, the Dennis years, then they got Luka, and you know these past few years, how many new ones just over the past few months.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing it, post it on your social media,
Yes.
and all this. So many of you listen in the mornings on your routines on the way to work. Or some of you laying in bed in the morning, watch it on the TV with your wife. Okay.
some of you are showering. Listen to us right now.
Some of you are taking a shower. Some of you work out while you listen. We should do a whole thing of like, hey, post a picture where you
where
listen.
are you?
Where are you when you listen to Locked On Mavs every day? But seriously, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. And by the way, joining me as always, my co-host contributor, writermavs.com. The one more.
Let me eat my peaches.
The Peach Prince, the one more thinking. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Well, right now, I think it's halftime of Lakers Suns.
Oof.
And I'm just if
It's in the middle of the third quarter and the Suns are up by 20 all of a sudden.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Hook this up to my veins. I just love every bit of the fact that the Lakers could be out of this thing completely. It's just the Black Panther Michael B. Jordan meme of, is this your king? So I just want to throw that out there a little bit.
Just give him one for old time's sake.
Satnam.
Shame.
Shame those Lakers.
I just love it so much.
All right, let's get into our big questions today. So Isaac and I are going to go back and forth. We each brought 5 questions that we need to know the answers to after the playoffs. My first one, I think it's a pretty big one. And we've been hinting around it, talking about it, but I want to really.
These all big ones?
I really want to dive into it.
Wait, did you say you have a big one?
Jalen Brunson. I need to know 2 things. Is the defense real? And has he risen above the playoff problems? We need to know that by the end of the playoffs. That has to be a big thing because he has a contract coming, and we don't have a big sample size of him in the playoffs or in these big games. So 2020 in the bubble, he had the shoulder injury. He didn't go to the bubble, so you didn't see him in those playoffs. They obviously didn't make it in 2019. Last year, he played in all 7 games against the Clippers. Games 1 through 4, he averaged 19.6 minutes, so 20 minutes a game in those first 4 games. His plus minus was -9, -7, -19, and -9 in those 4 games. Not good. So then in games 5, 6, and 7, Carlisle played him less, basically half. Played him just about 12 minutes a game, 11.8 minutes a game. He was a -10, +9, and then -11. So that is not great for him, a guy that was coming off the bench and basically got played off the floor. And so now our big question is, can he stay? Can he stay on the floor? This year, we haven't seen him get played off the floor, either defensively or because of the offensive problems. Has that step up that Jalen Brunson has taken, is that enough so that he can be honestly, a secondary scorer next to Luka? Because that's what they're probably going to need in the playoffs.
Yeah, there were 6 players last year in the playoffs that averaged more minutes per game for the Mavericks than Jalen Brunson, and it's like you can't even imagine that now. That can't happen now. He averaged 8 points, per game for the entire series, and like you said, there were moments that he couldn't stay on the floor, even on offense. He struggled against the sides that put Nick Batum on him at times, and so. That's one of the shocking breaking news here. That's one of my, 5 questions bringing tonight also is just what in the contract stuff is looming over the offseason too, of what happens in the playoffs. If the same thing happens again in this playoffs against a different opponent where you're not playing the Clippers, how does that impact what happens this summer? You still have to pay him because you can't just let him walk for nothing.
Nope.
But does it make you entertain sign and trade, all of that? Or what's the other direction? What if you go into these playoffs against Utah or Denver or whoever, and he kills it? You're like, all right, now we're going to pay. He can be the, so my question was, is he going to prove to be the second guy next to Luka, the second scorer, the second playmaker? And I'm fascinated by that. We've talked it to death, and there's really nothing. I will tell you, before they start the playoffs, I want all of our listeners to do something. I want you to go to YouTube. I want you to pull up our media day interview between us two and Jalen Brunson in person. Wow, you type so fast. I'm so impressed. And just watch that interview. It's 5 or 6 minutes. It's us sitting there talking to him. And I think you asked a question about the playoffs.
Yep.
And you could see the look in Brunson's face. You could hear him talk about how that stuck with him of that playoff series and him underperforming. He knows that. They're not trying to shy away from it. He's not trying to shy away from that. And I just think I'm going to go back and watch that before the playoffs start, because I want to see what he's been thinking about all year long.
I went back and looked at some of his numbers. I've been kind of tracking this throughout the year. This year, Jalen Brunson as a starter, so most of the year, there's a sample size from the beginning of the season, 10, 15 games or so, where he wasn't a starter, wasn't putting up the same numbers. 17.6 points a game, so about 18 points, 5 assists per game, shooting 50% from the field, just about 40% from 3, and 86% from the line, and his plus minus is a plus 4.2 on average as a starter. So 18 points, 5 assists, shooting 50, 40, 86. As a starter. Great numbers, really, really good numbers for Brunson. That's all the stuff we've been saying about him taking the next step. Then, if you take that and just put it against playoff teams, so any team in the playoffs, 1 through 10 in either conference, he's averaging 14.8 points, 4.5 assists, shooting 46, 35, 81. And his plus minus is just plus 1 on average. So 15 points, 4.5 assists, shooting 46. So he's shooting. His shooting is a little down. His scoring is down then, and his impact's a little bit down. Against Western Conference playoff teams, 14 points a game, 5 assists, shooting 43% from the field, 30% from 3, 81% from the line. So shooting is way down against these Western Conference playoff teams, and so. That's one of the things we've been tracking all year. People have noticed, hey, Brunson doesn't play well against some of these playoff teams. The numbers, at least the counting stats do prove that. Now, there have been games where he didn't score as much and still had a good impact, but his impact is mostly determined by the scoring. And so I think that's something we definitely have to watch.
Yeah, and how does that correlate with Dinwiddie? How are we going to see, and what's the leash for Brunson in the playoffs? What if it's a game and a half? Brunson's struggling scoring, and Kid just kind of pulls the plug on a little bit and says, all right, Dinwiddie's going to be the second guy.
We're seeing the leash with Dinwiddie right now, by the way, right? That Milwaukee game, Dinwiddie did not have a long leash there. I wonder if he flips that in the playoffs, or what happens between those two guys. Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to figure out how long, because at that point, everything is thrown out, whatever the contract situation, how much money you make, you're putting the best players on the floor. And it could get awkward at times, but I want Brunson to have a really good playoff so bad, not just for the team and just moving forward and what this offseason could hold, but also just because he's such a good dude. And I just love him. Luka loves him. And now Nick is getting out of his seat and is coming
Don't
back.
mind me. Don't mind me.
Did you just get a cup of peaches?
What? No, I have peaches on my shelf in my office in here.
You have a Magic Johnson jersey, so peaches would be better than that.
Just have peaches laying around. Coming up, let's get into the rest of our questions. I got a big question about Jason Kidd that I don't think we've talked about a lot yet. And then I have a big question about Nico Harrison too. We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, Isaac Harris.
Yes, sir. Wow, is your future so bright you need sunglasses?
My future is so bright, I need Shady Rays sunglasses. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of $200 sunglasses for a
you got a free pair?
For a fraction of the price.
Oh, heck no.
There you go.
You got 2 free pairs.
Polarized lenses.
I got nothing.
Well-constructed, durable frames, premium high-end finishes. Also, something that you won't find anywhere else. Shady Rays has an insane protection program. The biggest thing about sunglasses, whether you're wearing one pair or like me, I'm wearing 2 pairs of Shady Rays right now,
I'm so pissed.
is that you lose them all the time. You lose sunglasses, they get broken, all that. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try. If you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, this is pretty cool. 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized lenses. 50% off? Hold on. I got to take off 1 pair of sunglasses to read this better. 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKEDON for their best deal. Check it out. Tons of reviews. Shady Rays.
Can I get those black ones from you?
All right, Isaac Harris. Yeah, I'll give you these black ones.
Yeah.
All right, Isaac Harris. My future is now less bright. I took the sunglasses off. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps that matter a lot right now from every NBA game and analysis from our local experts. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. That's Locked On Now. All right, one of my questions about Jason Kidd.
Ooh, I'm ready.
Jason Kidd and coaching staff. Will the adjustments work in the playoffs? We had a ton of questions about Jason Kidd going into the season. A ton. Like, so many questions. I had many doubts. My doubts were well documented. A lot of those doubts have honestly been squelched or answered, or Jason Kidd has answered them. And one of those things we don't know yet is how he's going to be in the playoffs. Do all these things that he's been doing, that what the defense has been doing, the things that they've changed when they start trapping players, when they, change to a zone defense, when they change who's out there in, lineups and things like that. For the most part, we've seen Kidd make good adjustments. We've seen his coaching staff make good adjustments. But Jason Kidd in his career has only won 1 playoff series as a coach. In 2014, the number 6 Nets beat the number 3 Raptors. That was the Joe Johnson, Darren Williams, KG, Paul Pierce Nets versus the Lowry, DeRozan, Jonas Valanciunas Raptors. So that was a while ago. So that's an upset victory, even though that Nets team was supposed to be way better than the 6th seed, but won that 1 playoff series. And then he was only in the playoffs 2 other times in his career. 2015, the Bucks were the number 6 seed and they got beat by the number 3 Bulls in 6 games. And then 2017, those Bucks got beat by the Raptors, the Lowry, DeRozan Raptors, in 6 games as well. And so this is a big test for Jason Kidd and staff.
I tried to find a Jason Kidd question in this, and I couldn't land on one, mainly because of a little bit of the coaching stuff that you just said. I think my biggest question for Kidd is next year. Because you look at the first years that he's been at places, you look at the Brooklyn year, which was the first and only
1 year.
They go to the second round. They win that playoff series, like you said. They go to the second round, good season, and then crap hits the fan and all the stories and stuff. He's gone from Brooklyn. He goes to Milwaukee. They have this incredible defense. Everybody's talking about this defense, is blitzing, all the stuff, and they go to the playoffs. And then the next season they miss the playoffs and they win 33 games.
Yep.
So it's like year 2. So, they went to the playoffs the year after that in year 3, but that's my biggest question is kind of like, what does year 2 look like? Because we've seen year 1 look good for Jason Kidd in the 2 head coaching spots. I think there's obviously a question of like, how will this translate from the regular season to the playoffs? How good can this year 1 be? But for me with Jason Kidd, I think my biggest question mark right now is going into next season. We're still in the honeymoon stage, I guess, of the relationship between him and Luka and the players, and how his ways, when you're with Rick for so long, a new guy comes in and like, oh, this is cool. Well, how cool is it going to be in year 2? Hopefully it is, but I'm just curious about that.
I do think that some of the questions we had were about his approach, right? The stuff in the the stuff in the Giannis book that Giannis did not write, but the stuff in the Giannis book was about how Jason Kidd's approach was more of like an old school, why did I want to say get off my lawn? But no, it's like a go run and on Christmas and all that kind of stuff. And he's really changed his approach, right? His approach is so different. When he got those 2 technicals the other night, it was just like so weird to see Jason Kidd angry or upset or fired up about anything. He's just been so even keeled. He's wanted to stay.
This is a positive world.
Like super positive. That's what he wants to do. He wants you to stick around and be the player, the player friendly coach and all that, and just put guys in the right situations. And one of his comments that I think resonated well with this team is, hey, I'm just here to win games and get these guys paid, right? He like literally is for the players right now. And I think that's something that's different from his first couple of stops. And that's why we haven't had as many questions about, Jason Kidd as a coach this year, is that it's just gone better, right? And so I think I think this approach is more sustainable than the, he's not Tibbs, right? Like he was Tibbs before. It seemed like he was Tom Thibodeau and his, with that Bucks team where you come in, you're like, all right, it's going to be my way or the highway. We're going to play this defense. And then that defense doesn't work next year. I think this type of defense is sustainable. This type of coaching is sustainable as well. So that's why I went more with playoff adjustment, because I think that it is going to be, hopefully as good as it is this year so far with Kidd.
Yeah.
Give me a question. Give me one of your questions.
Oh, thank you.
Never mind. Let me go with
dang it. I mean, will small ball / Dwight Powell at the center spot work? It's just, I think, if I had to land on, yes, I'm curious about Brunson and we have some others, but I think this is just the biggest one for me because it ties into yesterday's podcast, which if you didn't listen, go listen to yesterday. We talked all about the Rudy Gobert rumor, Tim McMahon's story on the Low Post podcast, and just the Mavs interest connection to Rudy. We did pros, cons, everything with Rudy Gobert.
The Mavs interest in Gobert is real. So if you're like denying it and saying, oh, this is not real, those are fake rumors, they're not. Go listen to that podcast.
Yeah, and you loved it in the comments on YouTube. Love seeing people just go back and forth on it. But
lots of comments.
Spoiler alert, at the end of that podcast yesterday, I said, I'm like, I just have to see how far this team goes first before I kind of make a decision on it. And I'm so intrigued by it. Like, how far can this Dwight Powell at the center spot, Luka running the show? We know they have great chemistry. How far can that go? And depending on how far they go, does that change anything or impact the direction they want to go in the offseason? If they make a conference finals run, if they go to the finals, do they say, oh, this style works and we don't have to invest in the center spot? We can just do shooters around Luka and spend elsewhere and all that stuff. So I think that's my biggest question, is how far can this current construction take them?
And this question doesn't only just involve Dwight Powell. It's, can we do the small ball, right? We've seen looks with Dorian at the 5 or even Bertans at the 5. Right? We've seen a lot of those looks this year. And what if they just decide, hey, we've tried this. We haven't like really rolled it out because it's hard on a lot of guys and it takes a toll, and this defense already takes a toll on guys. But what if they go out there and they're like, hey, let's just, against the Nuggets, let's just throw out this really small lineup and they'll just have to have Jokic just try and destroy us inside. But those 3-point shooters don't get going. And that's fine with us because we're going to hit threes on the other side and be able to score with them. And so what if they just, they do that too? It's not all about Dwight Powell. It's about the small ball where you don't have to just depend on a center because you're paying him $30-40 million and have to play him, right? So yeah, that question covers a couple of things, and I'm really interested to see how it works.
And that's the test right there. Like, what if they go out in round 1, they play Denver, and they run this small ball a ton, and they just bring the double on Jokic on the block, and they're like daring Jokic to go against Dorian or whoever it is in the post, and they're bringing a double each time. And let's say they beat Denver in 5, and they're just scrappy, they're rotating everything. I think you're walking out saying, okay, well, if Jokic can't, beat us, with that, then this could be a sustainable, system for us. Anyway.
Jokic this year, 24 points a game against the Mavs, 16 boards, 6 assists on average in the 3 games. And the Mavs went 2-1 in those games. So it's not like he destroyed the Mavs really, right? Like he had good games. He had that one good game, the first game in October, but that was before everything changed for the Mavs. So since that first blowout game, he's not been incredibly great against the Mavs. So that's something to definitely watch. Not saying he won't be, of course. He'll come out in the playoffs and score 40 in the first game or something like that. But it's definitely something to watch. And yeah, that's a big question. But coming up, I'm going to ask my question about Nico Harrison because it's the question that you just asked. But I'm going to take it a step further with Brunson and Dinwiddie. What do the Mavs need to see from those two guys in order for it to influence the Mavs' plans in the offseason? We'll talk about that and more coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about our favorite protein bar. Some of you hear the word protein bar and you're like, I'm out. I don't work out. Hey, same. And you're like, I don't care about that. I didn't either. But now I tried a Built Bar. And honestly, the brownie batter puff, I think it's better than the coconut brownie chunk.
That's blasphemy.
I think it's better. I've decided. I've decided now.
I'm going right now to the website.
Order you. I'll bring you some. I'll give you these sunglasses from Shady Rays, and then I'll give you a brownie batter puff, and you got to try it and tell me it's not better. 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, 7 grams of sugar, and a bar covered in 100% chocolate. And you can get 15% off with our promo code. Go get it right now. 15% off with the promo code LOCKED15, the number 15, LOCKED15. And go on Built. They have these cute Built puffs that are yellow chirps. They're like little peeps.
I'm not gonna lie, that's what I kind of cringed at. But man, these puffs, brownie batter, or brownie batter puffs, they look incredible.
They're so good. Honestly, the first Built Bar that I've had that melts in your mouth.
How many carbs is in this thing?
That's a good question.
A low amount. 130 calories.
12 grams of carbs.
Yeah, take that dietary fiber out. So around 10 or 11. But
there you go. Oh, sorry. I don't know about the dietary fiber. Isaac, inform us about dietary fiber.
No, I have nothing to say about that.
Go check it out. Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15 to get 15% off your entire order at Built.com.
Not good.
All right, Isaac Harris, let's continue our burning questions that we need answered into the playoffs. Here's mine. Nico Harrison in the front office. Piggybacking off of your point that you just made. What do you need to see, or what are you looking for in the playoffs? How do playoff results influence your plans? This is something you've talked about on this podcast and this episode and like all this week. How do the playoff results influence plans? And now I'm going to take that into what do we need to see from Brunson and Dinwiddie in order for the Mavs to just kind of settle and be like, okay, we got these two guards. We don't desperately need to upgrade at that spot. Because before this season, if you look back at who the Mavs are playing in the playoffs, it was Luka. Tim Hardaway was the one really going off, in the playoffs. And then it was like nobody else because Brunson was getting played off the floor and that was it, right? It was Richardson couldn't play. Brunson couldn't play. It was Luka and Tim Hardaway and then Trey Burke. Like those are the guys that were playing, like scoring and handling the ball as far as like guards and wings. What do they need to see from Brunson and Dinwiddie in order for them to not just desperately say, okay, we have to put all of our chips and all of our eggs, Easter, all that. We have to put it into a basket to try and upgrade at that guard position, the secondary ball handler. Because I don't know if we've fully answered that yet, even with Brunson's ascendance this year.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I mean, you look at scoring last year, like you said, Tim he was second by Luka was at 36 basically. Shout out to the one guy who was like, why didn't you round up from 35 to 36 in the comment? Here you go. That guy was in my head as I was going through the Brunson numbers. He averaged 35.7 points, so we'll round it up for you. 36 points in the playoffs.
Apparently in Europe they round up all their numbers. So I'm
down for rounding up. It's just like, man, really upset, bro.
I only round up and round down when it benefits the point that I'm trying to make.
But like you said, Tim was at 17. Shout out to KP who averaged 13 points in that series. But I'll sway a little bit to also look at the shooters. And I think that's one of the biggest things. We're like, hey, if they all shoot above this certain percentage, then they're gonna win. They didn't really shoot that bad last year from three. Like you look across the board.
Well, that's why they won games.
Yeah, Tim shot 40% from three. Dorian, 43%. Jalen Brunson, 46%. Maxey, 40%. Like these guys shot well from three. So I mean,
KP 30%.
I skipped it, but I mean, it's just what does Brunson have to do for you to feel comfortable committing $20 million a year to him in the playoffs? And that's what I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that.
That's what we need to know from Nico Harrison. And then it goes to Dinwiddie as well. What do you need to see from Dinwiddie? From either of those guys. If both of those guys get hot, then all of a sudden, you're talking about something like that. All of a sudden, the Mavs are dangerous. If you have those two guys that are getting hot, you saw what they could do when the trade first happened, and Dinwiddie had a really good hot stretch there. So let me just do my last one real quick, and then we'll throw to yours. All right, what's the best outcome for the Mavs if one of these players gets red hot, like 50% from three?
Mm-hmm.
What's the best outcome if one of these guys gets hot? Dinwiddie, Brunson, Dorian, Reggie, and then maybe Maxey or Bertans. The Mavs go Mavs go the farthest or have the best outcome if one of those guys gets super hot.
Dinwiddie.
More than Brunson.
Yeah. I think Dinwiddie's a more talented overall offensive player than Brunson. And I think like if okay, let's say this. If Luka tweaks his ankle in a game and they're like, he's out for the rest of the game and it's the fourth quarter, I feel a little bit more comfortable about Dinwiddie running, like creating, doing the step back, getting to the basket, getting to the free throw line, and actually like Dinwiddie's the only guy on the roster that I think could put up 32 in a playoff game. And disagree. I don't know.
And I'm more worried about Brunson's 3-point shooting or about Dinwiddie's 3-point shooting than I am about Brunson's. I think Brunson will still, if he's not getting super hot, he's still probably going to shoot 35, 38%, and that'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right. But Dinwiddie,
threes too in the corner.
Dinwiddie, if he's not shooting 50%, he's shooting like 20%. That's the swing for Spencer Dinwiddie. So I think I agree with you. The sneaky one is Bertans. What if Bertans just shoots 50% from three? They just throw him out there and he's hitting like 5 threes a game.
And then everybody's like, "Oh, it's Peja."
Yeah, right. Yeah. But that's just a weapon that the Mavs haven't really had. A guy like that. But Reggie is also an interesting candidate for this question. If Reggie gets super hot, he shoots 50% from three. Then all of a sudden, the Mavs can go really far. Dorian last year, he only took 5 a game, but he shot 43% on those. I mean, that's like pretty good already. That's almost a 50% already. So, but yeah, interesting. I thought that was an interesting question. Who gets hot and how far do the Mavs go? All right, how many more questions do you have, or what? Just give me another one.
I think you could take that question and flip it another direction too. Of like, who would it?
Who would hurt the most?
What would hurt the most if they shot like 26% from three? And I would reverse it at that point. I wouldn't say Dinwiddie. I would say Dorian. If Dorian went like 25%, I think it would kill him because they have to have Dorian out there for defense, and teams they're going to dare him to shoot threes.
Yep.
So that would kill him. But so I have two. I'll save the bigger one for the last one. But real quick, this one's a smaller one. I wouldn't put this as like a big overarching question for the playoffs. But
then that's what this pod is. So
stop, because you already gave all of your questions and covered everything. Can Josh Green up his value more in the playoffs? For however you want to take that, up his value for just playing on this Mavs team, up his trade value, up his value to where we're walking out of a playoff series saying, dang, you could be like a solid piece in this rotation or another rotation. And
like the Jazz rotation.
I just want to see that. Like, I would be personally I'm not going to be bummed if they go on a big playoffs, run and Josh Green has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I think I'll be okay.
But I would be a little bummed if they lose in the first round, like 7 games, or let's say they lose in the second round in like 5 or 6, and we still have nothing. We have no clue about Josh Green. Like, he plays like 5 minutes a game and we didn't learn anything. We don't know if he should be out there. And you're like, all right, well, now he's just going to get better this offseason, which he will. But I just want to see a little bit in the playoffs of, do you belong in the playoffs? My next one.
It's a good one.
Unless you have a point to add in that. Because he's still under contract. It's a cheap contract. Like, if he hits, like, let's say he does have a big series and his minutes goes up a little bit in the playoffs and they can't take him off the floor in the second unit and all this stuff. We're like, that helps this team a lot.
Yeah, like if they go small in these lineups we're talking about, and he's the extra guy, right? And it's not it's like, not one of the guards, or I guess it would have to it would have to be like if he's out there instead of like Dinwiddie or Brunson.
Yeah. Okay, my last one. What's the reason they lose? I think this is one of my questions of what's the reason they lose in the playoffs? Is it bad shooting? I'm giving you multiple choice on this one.
Oh,
bad shooting, the lack of second scorer, or the big man. What?
It's the shooting to me, like by far.
Okay.
I think that the shooting, the Mavs just depend so much on their shooting. Like, look at all their games they've played this year against the Bucks. They shoot 40% from three, they win the game, right? Like they just have to hit from three in order to win some of these games, because like we've said all year, those shots are open. The Mavs are going to get those shots. They have to knock them down.
I'm with you.
I think it's pretty clearly that.
I think somebody can make the big argument of saying, okay, the lack of big, you're losing the rebounding battle. Let's say you're losing, like people are scoring in the paint on you at will, and the other team has an opposing big that just kills you down low, and you're like, that's the reason they lost the series. The second guy, like what if some of these guys are shooting threes, but they're not shooting them at a high enough clip that they really are losing, or the second guy, here's my point. What if the on-off numbers for Luka are just absolutely brutal? Like when he's off, like they're just losing so bad.
It's just like last year
that you're walking around saying, we need a second guy so bad. But I agree with you. It's the shooting, because more than other two, because they're going to run that high pick and roll with Luka and Dwight so much that, like we've said a million times, the shots are going to be there. And if they hit them, they'll advance in the playoffs.
Also, to your point of the rebounding battle, we haven't heard that as much this year. Like, oh, they just got killed on the boards. We haven't heard that very much this year. Warriors, Suns, Nuggets, Mavericks, all right around like 45 rebounds per 100 possessions this year. Like all about the same. Now the Grizzlies are way up. They're number 1. Jazz are number 3. So those ones are notable for sure. But the Warriors, Nuggets, Mavs, and the Suns are all like right in that same spot. And so it's not like they all,
it would take them going against like Utah or Memphis in a series,
right,
and losing the rebounding battle by like 16 to 18 every game.
Yeah.
And it's so noticeable. They're pulling down like a ton of offensive rebounds, and we don't know what to do.
Steven Adams is dunking over everybody, over all the Mavs.
Kyle Anderson.
There it is. Yeah, any more?
No, that's it. I mean, the other ones just overlap a little bit. So
let us know in the comments, what are your big questions going into the playoffs, guys? There's some great stuff coming up. We got a game against the Pistons tonight. If you're listening, watching this on Wednesday, I think Cade Cunningham's supposed to play in that one. I'm interested to see him play. But there's
give a standings update.
Big standings update right here. So the Jazz beat the Grizzlies without Ja and Brooks, but the Nuggets lose. So now the Jazz are a half game ahead of the Nuggets. There's still opportunity for the Mavs to move up against the Warriors. They both have 3 games left. The Mavs are only 1 game back. They own the tiebreaker. So, if the Mavs win 1 more game than the Warriors over this next stretch, so the Mavs win 2, the Mavs win 3, the Warriors only win 2, then the Mavs can still move up to 3. But it is looking like the Jazz.
Out. Oh yeah, Mavs went out. They're a 3 or 4 seed. And it's point blank on that. It would take them, losing 1 or 2. Jazz. Here's the thing with Utah's schedule though. Utah plays OKC, Portland, and Phoenix their last 3 games of the season. Phoenix isn't playing for anything right now. We know. Go look at the OKC Portland box score if you want to know if they play.
Yeah, go play anything. Who he play for just for that game.
So it's looking like Utah will probably win out. So if Dallas just wins out, which not saying it's going to be the easiest thing in the world, watch the Detroit game. That Spurs game could be anything.
That one's sneaky.
So let's see. They went out. They're a 3 or 4 seed. They're hosting a playoff game Easter weekend next weekend.
The other thing about the Spurs is this Lakers team is down by like 20 points right now with 4 minutes left in the 4th quarter. So the Spurs may have already like earned that 10 seed. So they may not be really playing for anything either. But there you go. Standings update. Guys, that's big questions going into the playoffs. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs and getting us to 12,000 subs.
Let's go. Peace out.
Boom.